Channel 4 News begins right now with a breaking news alert.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us. Any moment now, Special Prosecutor State Attorney Angela Corey will make an announcement on her investigation of the shooting death in Sanford, February 26th, of 17-year-old Trayvon Martin.
We are being told George Zimmerman is in custody right now and will be charged with second-degree murder. You're looking live inside the state attorney's office where Angela Corey will face reporters, both local and national. There was a crowd building right there. Of course, it was under tight security down at the state attorney's office. Not a lot of people being allowed in. They want to keep it under control as this announcement is made.
Also watching this in Washington, D.C. right now, Trayvon Martin's parents, who are awaiting this announcement. They have been calling since the day after Trayvon Martin was shot. They have been calling for justice. They are hoping that Angela Corey will make the announcement that they have been calling for, that George Zimmerman is going to be charged with a crime. Now, we're being told, as you heard Mary say, that George Zimmerman is in custody at this point, and that we're being told that the announcement that Angela Corey will make in just a matter of a few moments, that she is charging him with second-degree murder.
Second-degree murder, ordinarily defined as an intentional killing that is not premeditated or planned, nor committed in a reasonable heat of passion. Let's go live now. We're looking live, actually, at the state attorney's office. As we said, here comes the state attorney. Let's listen in on Angela Corey as she makes this announcement.
Good evening, everyone. I am Angela Corey, the special prosecutor for the Trayvon Martin case. Just moments ago, we spoke by phone with Sabrina Fulton and Tracy Martin. It was less than 3 weeks ago that we told those sweet parents that we would get answers to all of their questions, no matter where our quest for the truth led us. And it is the search for justice for Trayvon that has brought us to this moment. The team here with me has worked tirelessly looking for answers in Trayvon Martin's death. I want to introduce to you Bernie Delarianda, one of my top homicide prosecutors, and John Guy, my other top homicide prosecutor, who will lead this investigation. With us also is Jim Madden from the Florida Department of Law Enforcement, Dominic Pape, also one of our special agents in charge, our sheriff, John Rutherford, and our undersheriff, Dwayne Centerfit. We appreciate so much all of their cooperation in this. And I especially want to thank my two state attorney investigators, T.C. Osteen and Dale Gilbreth, who have spent countless hours doing what they do best, investigating homicides. Excuse me. Allow me to take a moment to acknowledge our governor, Rick Scott, and his office, Attorney General Pam Bondi and her office, along with our U.S. Attorney, Bobby O'Neill, for their continuing support of our appointment to this case and their support of this investigation. We spoke with all of them briefly and informed them of the results of our investigation and our plan as we continue. I can tell you we did not come to this decision lightly. This case is like a lot of the difficult cases we have handled for years here in our circuit, and we've made this decision in the same manner. Let me emphasize that we do not prosecute by public pressure or by petition. We prosecute based on the facts of any given case, as well as the laws of the state of Florida. When they appointed us to this case less than 3 weeks ago, I want you to know that these two fine prosecutors, despite all that is on their plate already, handling all of the homicides in the 4th Judicial Circuit, supervising the other young lawyers who also handle homicides, they willingly took this case on and said, we will lead this effort to seek justice for Trayvon. We launched an intensive investigation building on all of the work that Sanford Police Department and the State Attorney's Office in Seminole County had already done. Unless you've ever been a law enforcement officer or a prosecutor handling a difficult homicide case, you cannot know what it's like to launch this type of investigation and come to the right conclusion. The Supreme Court has defined our role on numerous occasions as prosecutors that we are not only ministers of justice, we are seekers of the truth. And we stay true to that mission Again, we prosecute on facts and the laws of the great and sovereign state of Florida, and that's the way it will be in this case. When we took our oath of office in 2009, we pledged not only to look out for our precious victims of all of our cases, but also to adhere to the rules of the criminal justice system and the rules of our Constitution and statutes that protect a defendant's rights as well. When we charge a person with a crime, we are equally committed to justice on their behalf as we are on our victim's behalf. So we are here to do that on behalf of our victim, Trayvon Martin, and on behalf of the person responsible for his death, George Zimmerman. We will continue to seek the truth throughout this case. Every single day, our prosecutors across this great country handle difficult cases, and they adhere to that same standard, a never-ending search for the truth and a quest to always do the right thing for the right reason. There is a reason cases are tried in a court of law, not in the court of the public, and not by the media, because details have to come out in excruciating and minute fashion, detail by detail, bit of evidence by bit of evidence. And it's only then when the trier of fact, whether it's a judge or a jury, gets all of those details, that then the laws applied to that and a decision can be rendered. We will scrupulously adhere to our ethical obligations and to the rules of evidence in presenting this case that way. Today, we filed an information charging George Zimmerman with murder in the second degree. A capias has been issued for his arrest. With the filing of that information and the issuance of a capias, he will have a right to appear in front of a magistrate in Seminole County within 24 hours of his arrest, and thus formal prosecution will begin. We thank all of those people across this country who have sent positive energy and prayers our way. We ask you to continue to pray for Trayvon's family as well as for our prosecution team. I want to especially thank Mr. Crump and Mr. Parks, who have stayed in touch daily with us on behalf of our victim's family. Remember, it is Trayvon's family that are our constitutional victims and who have the right to know the critical stages of these proceedings. I will entertain some questions, but remember, we have very strict rules of ethics, very strict rules of criminal procedure, and we will be adhering to those rules. I will confirm that Mr. Zimmerman is indeed in custody. I will not tell you where. That's for his safety as well as everyone else's safety. I'm sorry.
Can you tell us what led to your decision today? Was there one single piece of evidence that led you to charge him with murder in the second?
We don't discuss the evidence in a case. It would be improper to do so. It was a full investigation, full facts and circumstances that lead us to any decision in any case. I'm sorry.
Did he turn himself in, or was he arrested?
Mr. Zimmerman turned himself in and was and by turning himself in was arrested on the capias that had already been issued.
Why did it take so long to come to this decision?
Well, it didn't take long. We have many complicated homicides that are thoroughly investigated. Remember, the prosecutor's burden under our Constitution is proof beyond a reasonable doubt.
But it's been 45 days since Trayvon Martin was killed. Can you talk about the process leading up to this? And did somebody drop the ball in the investigation?
I can tell you that this investigation was underway by both the Sanford Police Department and Norm Wolfinger's office. The investigation was in full mode, and the governor appointed us less than 3 weeks ago, and we took the work that they had done, which was significant. We carried on with that work, and we arrived at our decision approximately last week. And then, of course, following proper Florida law and procedure, we had to make sure we had everything in place to issue this capias and make this arrest. Yes, sir. I'm sorry. Yes, sir.
Can you tell us what it was about what you uncovered that leads you to refuse his self-defense claim under the Stand Your Ground law?
Well, that's what will be in court, detail by detail, piece of evidence by piece of evidence, factual evidence, physical evidence, testimonial evidence. That's why we try cases in a courtroom.
Can you tell us whether Mr. Zimmerman is in the state of Florida? Is there already a bonding process underway?
I can tell you that in Seminole County, and I want to thank their chief judge, he was very kind in helping us start setting these procedures up last week. He informed us that they have a bond schedule there. And when a capias is issued, there is originally no bond, but that Mr. Zimmerman's lawyers will be entitled to request a bond, at which point a bond hearing will be held. Bond hearings are a common occurrence. Our lawyers handle them every day, and that's where that will be determined as to whether or not no bond, which is the bond set currently on the capias, will be changed by the court. Yes, ma'am.
Have you determined whose voice is crying for help on the 911 recording?
That would be commenting on the facts of the case, and we're not going to do that at this time. Yes, Catherine.
Talk about why your investigation led you to a second-degree murder charge, whereas the Sanford police investigation didn't even lead to an arrest.
Well, I don't believe that question is accurate in the sense that when you have a homicide, Florida's jury instructions even say that before you can reach a degree of homicide, you have to determine whether a person has committed an excusable homicide or a justifiable homicide. All murders are homicides, but not all homicides are murders. And Florida's law clearly says that if there is the affirmative defense of, for example, excusable homicide or justifiable homicide, that should be determined before you go to the degree of the crime. That's the process this case took. The only slight delay was the fact that the governor stepped in and appointed us to take this case over and handled it, and we did.
So did Sanford conduct a full and complete, I mean, if they had conducted a full investigation, do you believe Sanford police would have arrived at the same point you did?
We work together with our law enforcement officers here. As you see, I have my sheriff and our undersheriff here. We work with all of our law enforcement agencies where we try to work these cases together. Remember, prosecutors are law enforcement as well. And we work these cases with our investigating agencies, and we try to come to as many mutual decisions as we can. This case was in that process when the governor stepped in and appointed us to take it over. We have continued to work with the Sanford Police Department. We got full cooperation and all of those significant documents and records from Mr. Wolfinger's office, and then Bernie and John and their team took this over and did a lot more work, and we came to our conclusion based on the facts and Florida's law. Yes, sir.
Yes, ma'am. Obviously, the maximum sentence for second-degree murder would be life in prison. Is it your desire, as the prosecutor of this case, to see him go to jail for life, Mr. Zimmerman?
We don't make that determination at this time. What we are committed to do is get this case through the court system, and then, and if it goes to the trier of fact as the judge or the trier of fact of the jury, once there is a decision, then we would concern ourselves with the sentence. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
By new counsel for Mr. Zimmerman?
I have not personally been contacted. I do understand that he may have retained new counsel in the past couple of hours.
Corey, when he turned himself in, did he have anything to say? What was his demeanor?
If he did, I wouldn't be able to comment on it. I want you to know up front that one of the specific things we're not allowed to discuss are the statements of a defendant charged with a crime. And again, it's a constitutional protection that you all should be happy law enforcement affords every person charged with a crime. Yes, sir. I'm sorry?
Is Mr. Zimmerman inside?
I will not comment on where Mr. Zimmerman is. I can tell you he is within the custody of law enforcement officers in the state of Florida, and he will be taken when it's appropriate for the appropriate appearance in front of a judge. I'm sorry. Yes, sir.
Would you and Wolfinger have arrived at the same conclusion? Is that what you're saying had the case stayed?
I speak for Angela Corey and my prosecution team. This is the conclusion that we came to based on our review of the facts and evidence. I'm not sure they were through with the entire investigation at the point Mr. Wolfinger recused himself from this case.
Are you confident that you have the evidence for a conviction?
We have to have a reasonable certainty of conviction before we file charges. Anytime there's an affirmative defense, and there are numerous affirmative defenses that can be asserted before the arrest, immediately after the arrest, during the trial. We've had them come up in the middle of trial, haven't we? My fellow prosecutors that sit here, we've all faced this before. For example, alibi is an affirmative defense. Sometimes that gets put on us in the middle of the trial. So an affirmative defense always makes a criminal prosecution more difficult. We do everything within our power to take the facts we have at hand and prove the case beyond a reasonable doubt. Yes, sir.
Done for the debate about race and justice and the role that race might have in the pursuit pursuit of justice here? This is part of
I'm going to be quite honest with you, and I have some people who have lived through our justice system here, and they are among the finest people in Jacksonville, Florida. They represent but a small sample of the people who know that those of us in law enforcement are committed to justice for every race, every gender, every person of any persuasion whatsoever. They are our victims. We only know one category as prosecutors, and that's a V. It's not a B, it's not a W, it's not an H, it's V for victim. That's who we work tirelessly for. And that's all we know is justice for our victims. And we still have to maintain the constitutional rights. Remember our role, ministers of justice.
Can you talk about what went into your investigation, how much you went into re-interviewing and retracing the steps of everything that happened?
Anytime we take over a case, even from each other, we sometimes re-interview, we thoroughly go through the reports, we try to gather more evidence. A lot of the witnesses had already made statements in public even before we took over this case, so a thorough review of all of the statements that were made was done, and I can tell you I've got the finest prosecution team ever. I know every boss feels that way, but these people have the best experience you can ask for. I'm sorry, and I'll get to you in just one second. I'm sorry, yes, ma'am?
Were there new witnesses who you encountered during that process?
Florida is a full discovery state, and when and if the defense requests participation in the discovery process, the witness list will be released at that time. Hold on one second. Yes, sir.
Under Florida law, a person is presumed to have immunity from any prosecution under the Standing Ground law. I'm curious, you still haven't articulated what put in your mind that, what can you say about the facts that made you think that that immunity was waived and was not going to be able to be?
I'm sorry. I thought I articulated very clearly that we don't discuss the facts of the case, and that's for a reason. We're law enforcement. This is the criminal justice system. People's rights have to be protected, and it's designed a certain way, not only under the Constitution of the United States and the state of Florida. We have rules of criminal procedure, Florida statutes, and rules of ethics. So much information got released on this case that never should have been released. We have to protect this investigation and this prosecution for Trayvon, for his family, and for George Zimmerman, and that's what we will continue to do.
Angela, did you talk to George personally at all?
I did not, Catherine. We don't talk to any defendant who's represented by counsel unless he waives his right to counsel. We never even had to address that situation.
Yesterday, the attorneys who were representing Mr. Zimmerman, or at least speaking for him, said they had to recuse themselves because they hadn't been in contact with him. Can you shed any light at all on how Mr. Zimmerman came to turn himself in?
I cannot.
Was it a coordinated process at all?
It's a coordinated process, and law enforcement has had this under control since we've gotten this case. And I know there was a lot of speculation about, oh my goodness, does law enforcement know where he is? Do we have this under control? This is what we do every single day on behalf of our community. It's what FDLE does every single day on behalf of the citizens of this great state. The governor and Pam Bondi put as much or as many resources as they could on this case, and I don't think that there was ever a concern that if the decision was made to charge Mr. Zimmerman, that it would be made in a timely fashion and that law enforcement would have it under control to take him into custody.
At this early stage, do you expect the trial to be in Seminole County?
We don't know that yet. Yes, sir, I'm sorry.
That might have been the same question.
Okay.
His former attorney said yesterday that he actually contacted you. Can you talk about what happened when you all received that phone call?
What happens with every phone call, a message was taken and I turned it over to Bernie and Bernie handled it from there, but we called his lawyers because, again, we don't talk to someone represented by counsel pursuant to our rules of ethics. So no contact was made specifically between Mr. Delarianda. Mr. Guy was and is still prosecuting a first-degree murder case where our victim is a former Marine who was brutally shot for a few dollars at a gas station here. We have, unfortunately, brutal homicides that we fight hard for all the time. We will fight just as hard in this case. Yes, sir.
Affect the Department of Justice investigation?
The Department of Justice, thank you for asking that question. They conduct their own investigation. I've been in contact with Bobby O'Neill, our U.S. Attorney, Tom Battle, one of the Department of Justice people who's helped us with a lot of the civil rights contacts and issues. He's helping us. A whole slew of DOJ lawyers are helping us, but they're not working on our part of the investigation, and we don't work on their part of the investigation. We always share information with our federal counterparts on numerous cases when and if it's needed.
You said you don't want to discuss the facts of the case, but by what the actions that you are taking, you are basically making a statement that you do not believe stand your ground as a plausible defense. Could you at least address the fact that you, by taking an action and by arresting Mr. Zimmerman, you are in fact saying stand your ground in your mind does not come to play in this case?
This case is just like many of the shooting deaths we've had in our circuit. If stand your ground becomes an issue, we fight it if we believe it's the right thing to do. So if it becomes an issue in this case, we will fight that affirmative defense.
How would you say stand your ground has affected your job since it became law?
My prosecutors, and a lot of them are here, and I'm so proud of them, they have worked tirelessly running this office while we've been working on this case. They fight these stand your ground motions. Mr. Moody just finished a 4-day full stand your ground motion on another case. We fight hard. Some of them we've won, and we've had to appeal them, or the defense has appealed, and we've won it on appeal. Some we fought hard, and the judge ruled against us. That's happening to prosecutors all over the state. It is the law of the state of Florida, and it will be applied.
Do you think it's invoked too much?
Justifiable use of deadly force, as we all knew it before stand your ground was issued, was still a tough affirmative defense to overcome. But we still fight these cases hard. I'm not going to comment on the specific law at this time. We're law enforcement. We enforce the laws of the state of Florida, and if that law becomes an affirmative defense, just like alibi, insanity, entrapment, or any of the other many affirmative defenses, we'll handle it accordingly.
You weren't sure about Seminole County being the venue currently? Or
No,
the future,
Seminole
or?
County is absolutely the venue. When we're appointed as prosecutors, we step in to the prosecution role down in Seminole County. So right now, it is the court of jurisdiction. It is the venue. The question was, did we think we'd be able to try the case there? Or I thought, was that your question, Bob? Okay. We think we'd be able to try it there? That's a determination that'll be made closer to if and when we pick a jury.
Perhaps based in part on publicity and pretrial publicity. Tell us your concerns about what you've heard, what you've seen out there in publicity, if you have, and what effect it could have on a jury in Seminole County or elsewhere.
You asked about my concerns. I will tell you. There's been an overwhelming amount of publicity in this case that we hope does not keep us from being able to pick a fair and impartial jury. Both the state and the defense are entitled to a fair and impartial jury. We think a lot of facts got put out, and see, that's the problem. When I told you it comes out in front of a jury, they're not allowed to render a decision until everything is in front of them. In fact, they're specifically instructed by the judge that they can't form a decision until they've heard everything. And so it is regrettable that so many facts and details got released and misconstrued, but we hope that a lot of it, and the media has helped toning it down a lot and making sure that people understand Florida law and the process. And we hope that people will continue to do that. Yes, sir.
Closely at how the police conduct their investigation. Looking back at the Stanford Police Department, would you say was their investigation thorough?
Well, I'm not going to comment on that other than that they were a tremendous help to us and had already done a lot of witness interviews. They did what the police do. Anytime you have a shooting scene and there's a person whose death is caused, the police launch a thorough and intensive investigation. That was done here, but before the investigation could be finished, there was a lot of outcry about this case, and then it changed course, and we got appointed to take over the investigation.
But based on the details you know of the case and what happened that evening, do you think it's reasonable to expect that there should have been an arrest that evening?
We have numerous homicides where immediate arrests are not made. And so to us, it did not seem unusual. I think judgment has to be made when the final decision is reached. And that's what we would have hoped the public would have waited for. But some people did not wait. And so an arrest can only be based upon probable cause. And so we believe that that's what the Sanford Police Department was trying to do. And if there is any sort of determination as to what they did or didn't do, that will be handled by someone other than our prosecution team. Yes, sir.
You invoked the name of Trayvon Martin's parents at the very beginning of this news
I
conference.
did.
Can you shed any more light on the length and breadth of that conversation with them, and did they express confidence that your process now will be able to bring them the justice they feel like they need and has been denied?
I think that after meeting with Trayvon's parents that first Monday night after we got appointed in this case, Bernie was there, John was there, our prosecution team was there. The first thing we did was pray with them. We opened our meeting in prayer. Mr. Crump and Mr. Parks were there. We did not promise them anything. In fact, we specifically talked about if criminal charges do not come out of this, what can we help you do to make sure your son's death is not in vain? And they were very kind and very receptive to that. And as I stated, Mr. Delarionda's been in touch with Mr. Crump and with Ms. Fulton and Mr. Martin since we took over this case, and we intend to stay in touch with them. But basically, we only had a few minutes to talk with them. I believe they are going to want to talk later. And they now know that charges have been filed, and they are now hearing, as we speak, that George Zimmerman is in custody of law enforcement in our state. We're very proud of the job law enforcement has done, and we're very proud to stand here and tell you that we represent the people of the state of Florida. Thank you so much.
You've been listening to Angela Corey, live from the State Attorney's Office, announcing her decision in the investigation of the Trayvon Martin shooting. Any moment now, we will be hearing from Trayvon Martin's parents. But while we're waiting for them to step up to the microphones in Washington, D.C., our crime analyst Ken Jefferson is here, along with defense attorney Randy Reep. Welcome to you both.
Thanks so much for being here. Randy, let's begin with you. Now, you know, Angela Corey called it a difficult case, of course, and of course we all know such an emotional, powerful case. And she mentioned we prosecute not by public pressure, but by facts, by the laws of the state of Florida. This is not an emotional thing, although when she came out, I just felt like it felt like a state of calm. She was so, the way she speaks anyway, the state attorney, she has an amazing way of explaining.
Indeed. I think she said a bunch of great things, obviously, and the way her delivery is just, it is
Powerful.
very good. She mentioned that, though. This isn't a public opinion case. She's not going to ever file a charge based on the public opinion. She specifically said petition, which is how much of this got its hoopla. And in fact, that's one of the big issues is through the media, we have a lot of information, but we don't really have a lot of facts. She said she wouldn't discuss the details fact by fact, and really we don't know them, which speaks a little bit to how it took a little while for this case to develop.
We all want to know them, but we have to wait.
And we will.
And we will
but
see.
There's a format for that, and it's a jury trial, and that's who needs to hear that.
Setting aside the legal issue for a moment, Ken, the state of Florida, the city of Sanford has gotten a bad rap, or at least a rap all around the country from people who have made up their minds about this case and the attacks that have been on the Stand Your Ground law, which I don't believe I ever heard Angela even mention the Stand Your Ground law. What would you say about the people around the country who were watching Angela Corey live on CNN? I wonder what they're thinking now about the process here in the state of Florida.
Well, Angela Corey did an outstanding job of laying out everything that her office did. But not only did she lay out everything that her office did, she laid out what the Sanford Police Department and the prosecutor there had already done, and they just more or less picked up the gauntlet and carried it farther. Now, the process was they were assigned to this 2.5 weeks ago, and now today they were announcing this. They didn't just find out today that they had probable cause to arrest him, but they wanted to make sure that they dotted all their I's, crossed all their T's, was very methodical with their investigation, and made sure that they had everything in place when they wrote the capias up. When you write a capias up, it means that charges are already filed. You need to get a judge to sign it. If he does not agree with everything that you have in that capias, he's not going to sign it. So thus, no arrest. And another thing was very smart, that she did not disclose where Zimmerman is, where he's being held in custody. One of the smartest things that they could have done, because it's a spectacle. The whole world is watching. You know, there's been a public outcry all over the United States. I mean, protests everywhere about this case. And the way that they went in, it makes me proud that our 4th Judicial Circuit State Attorney has went in and handled this case the way she has.
Thoughtfully, so carefully. Isn't it incredible that it has been kept under wraps?
It's very incredible, and that's part of their ethical code, that they have to keep it under wraps while it's being investigated. And it shows the true professionalism of the state attorney's office. I'm sure Randy will agree with me. It shows the true professionalism of the state attorney's office, that they can go in. They did not allow any information from their part to leak out. A lot of stuff leaked out, which made people form their own opinions and put a lot of information out there.
A lot of misinformation out there.
And it angered some people, it made some people feel good, but they were not facts. That was just information that's being put out there to keep the story going and to keep something alive. But now she's laid it all out. She's given the process. She's let everybody know, the whole world know that this is what we do next. This is how we're going to prosecute it. We're going to wait for their defense to come back with what they say their defense is going to be, and then they'll attack it from that point on.
Randy, do you know this Mark O'Mara, who is now the defense attorney?
We got that word just before coming on here. I don't know that I know him. I don't believe that I do. I believe he's a Central Florida attorney, and I don't have personal knowledge of him.
What about, let's go back to Angela Corey real quickly, tenacious prosecutor. Can you, and I understand that she has actually handled stand your ground cases.
Well, her office certainly does. There's ones pending in the 4th Judicial Circuit right now. Right. It is a evolving law. She actually did mention it in her press conference just a little bit. I was paying attention because it's one of the places I thought people would be trying to go with this. I don't think ultimately you're going to see this be about stand your ground. It may in fact be about self-defense, which is stand your ground is a type of self-defense, but it's not. I don't think you're going to find this a stand your ground case. I think it's going to be an escalation of an argument potentially as one of the defenses to come out.
Why second-degree murder instead of involuntary manslaughter? Again, without knowing what the evidence is. I mean, that really is second-degree murder. I mean, that's probably the most serious charge that you could bring against him, isn't it?
The way the procedures developed, it absolutely is the highest count that she could bring against him. But it's also, I think, just look on the information we've received. If that's accurate, it's also the fitting one. Did he commit an act with depraved heart or intent?
Got to interrupt you here for a second. The family is stepping up to the microphone in Washington, D.C. There's Reverend Al Sharpton. Let's listen in.
Let me say 45 days ago, Trayvon Martin was murdered. No arrest was made. The chief of police in Sanford announced after his review of the evidence there would be no arrest. An outcry from all over this country came because his parents refused to leave it there. His parents, acting out of love and acting out of the basic principles this country is built on, decided that they would go to some able attorneys. And they went to Mr. Crump and Mr. Parks and Attorney Jackson. They believed in the system and believed that the arrest would be made. And they waited until the police chief, let us not confuse the issue, he announced there will be no arrest. That's when Attorney Crump called us. We were marching in Selma to Montgomery. There's Change.org went viral, National Action Network, and some of us hit the streets. I remember the night we had the first big rally, 30,000 people. On that afternoon, Governor Scott asked to meet. He flew in and met and said that he was going to appoint a special prosecutor. I will say publicly that I did not trust Governor Scott. I did not trust the appointment. I want to congratulate him and the prosecutor for being what they should be. If we did not get this far, we would condemn them. We must say that despite the fact that we are of different political parties and different political persuasions, that tonight maybe America can come together and say that only the facts should matter when you're dealing with a loss of life. And I think that the prosecutor And I think that the governor did not make a decision based on public pressure, but I think they decided to review it based on public pressure. I think that they would not be irresponsible enough to proceed with a prosecution based on pressure. But had there not been pressure, there would not have been a second look. And I think that that credit should go to the nameless, faceless people, black, white, Latino, and Asian, all over this country that put hoods on and said, take another look at this, and that look has led to where we are tonight. They will attack the big names, and they will give credit to the big names. But it's the unknown people that took their time and money and stood up and said that that could be my son, that could be my grandson. And because of a second look, even conservatives on the other side of the political spectrum said, no, we're going to take a second look and do what is right. They've charged him with a serious crime. He deserves a fair trial. We do not want anybody high-fiving tonight. There's no victory here. There's no winners here. They've lost their son. This is not about gloating. This is about pursuing justice. We have not won anything. All we have done is establish that we must have the right to redress and justice in this country. So we will not be gloating around here. We are still mourning with this family. We will monitor the trial every step of the way. We will stand by and make sure that the rights of all are not violated. But this is not a night for celebration. It is a night that should have never happened in the first place. And we are trying to make sure that something happens that this will not happen again. Are we happy with the charge? Are we happy with the results? I would say that we must say that if Americans come together, they can achieve things. I remember, as I bring Attorney Crump, as we marched in Selma, I remember reading 44 years ago, a man was asked after they got the Voting Rights Act, how did he feel? And he said, we ain't where we ought to be. We ain't where we gonna be. We ain't where we wanna be. But thank God we ain't where we was. Tonight, we don't know where it will lead, but at least we have a shot at this family having the right redress. And that is because of, first, the courage of Attorney Parks and the battling attorney, Ben Crump.
Reverend Sharpton, Reverend Bryant, all the clergy, black and white, who didn't think of Robert to stand in their pulpits and say, it is about justice, 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 and only justice. We thank you for all those people who went on change.org to sign a petition, not just to think about it, but to do something. Thank you for your unselfish acts. Even though you did not know Trayvon Martin 44 days ago, you just know that a child had been killed, a child who was Sabrina's baby, was Tracy's son, had been killed, and you thought that if this was my child, I would sign this petition. So thank you for signing that petition. And to all those young people, all the young people, the people who marched, the people who stood up, who refused to look away. It is for those reasons, those young people who were Trayvon's age, those high school students who walked out and said that we refuse to stand for this. You know, it was those young people, those old people, we sometimes get complacent and we see so many things, we a little get jaded. But it's the young people who believe. They believe completely in justice, the concept, the idea, the dream of justice. I think those are the people who are sitting here today saying we can make a difference if we just stand for right. if we just stand up, if we just stand our ground, we can make a difference. I have to say thank you as a Florida citizen to our Governor Rick Scott, who came and met with the family that night and said that it is important that we get this right. He said that it's important we get it right. And he appointed Special Prosecutor Angela Corey, who told you how she prayed with the family and said, did not make any promises to us. I mean, no promises whatsoever. Mr. Martin, Ms. Fulton, Mr. Parks, Attorney Jackson, our legal team, Attorney Rand, didn't make one promise to us. Said we would look at all the evidence, every piece of the evidence, and based on the evidence that she will make a decision. Not based on public pressure, not based on anything else, but the evidence. And we always believed from day one that if you looked at that evidence fairly and impartially, that you would have to come to the conclusion that he had to be arrested and that this matter had to go before a judge and a jury. And that is all that Tracy Martin and Sabrina Fulton and their family have asked for. Nothing more or nothing less. And before I bring them up, I do go back, Reverend Sharpton and Reverend Bryant, to the call that has been well documented now when Tracy Martin called after, that Tuesday after, he was told that there was not going to be an arrest. And he was told that. So the reason why we had to protest and file 911 lawsuits and have all the young people, Reverend Brian, and have the change.org was to get to this point. We had to do that to get to this point. And it is because of that we can take a short breath, because we're just now getting to first base. This is only first base. We're on first base in this game of justice, and we have to remain vigilant. We have to stretch our muscles, exercise every day to make it to second base. And that'll be, you know, we got to deal with this stand your ground.
You're listening to Benjamin Crump commenting on justice and praising the movement that grew out of Trayvon Martin's death. He's about to introduce Trayvon Martin's parents, Tracy Martin and Sabrina Fulton, who are standing there.
That's what we're here. This is only first base. We must remember that.
Ken, they're talking about conversations that the Martin parents had with the police chief of Sanford, and they're saying that the police chief of Sanford told the parents that there's not going to be an arrest, but we haven't exactly heard from the police chief exactly what he says he said to the parents. Did he say there's never going to be an arrest, or there's not going to be an arrest at this time?
Well, what I know is that they've had several conversations with the police chief shortly after
he stepped aside.
Before he stepped aside. And I don't think anyone is privileged to that conversation other than the family and the police chief to know exactly what he said. Now, their perception could have been that there's never going to be an arrest. He may have meant that there's not going to be an arrest at this time because the investigation is still pending. It's still fluid. We're still actively looking into this. So that may not have been explained to them, or he may have said there's not going to be an arrest based on evidence that we have so far.
Angela Corey said to the audience, though, that the investigation never really stopped. She indicated that the Sanford Police Department and the Seminole County State Attorney's Office, that they were continuing the investigation even before the governor appointed her special prosecutor. Randy, am I right?
Yeah, and that's how all these cases developed. Because you have a crime committed and no arrest happens for several weeks, it's not that that's never going to happen. There's no short-term statute of limitations. Information continues to come forward. We learned about witnesses in this case days and weeks afterward, and I say witnesses, not necessarily eyewitnesses, but people who had information about the case. So I agree with Ken. I think it'd be very difficult to say that anyone ever said there'll never be an arrest. Maybe it was said, I don't know, but as law enforcement officers will tell me all the time, these cases are always building momentum, and there'll be a breaking point.
And because the tension was building in this case, there was a lot of pressure quickly on this case. So, you know, a quick decision would not have been the best thing to do at that particular time. They were right in the fact that Angela Corey's office went in and they just picked it up from where the police department down in Sanford left off. They picked it up and they continued to interview witnesses, maybe went back and interviewed some of the witnesses that the Sanford Police Department had done, because they recognize that it has to be done thoroughly because of the fact that you've got a dead kid and a person who admitted doing it, but for the reason that he said he did it.
A quick note, just so that you're watching and that you know that we are monitoring and waiting to hear from the parents. And of course, we're going to make sure that you get to hear from Trayvon Martin's parents as well.
City leaders in Sanford are also planning to comment. Now let's listen to Sabrina Fulton.
We simply wanted an arrest. We wanted nothing more, nothing less. We just wanted an arrest, and we got it. And I say thank you. Thank you, Lord. Thank you, Jesus. Secondly, I just want to speak from my heart to your heart, because a heart has no color. It's not black, it's not white, it's red. And I want to say thank you from my heart to your heart.
First of all, we just like to thank everyone once again for being compassionate about this, as we were, as we are, as we will be. As Attorney Crump said, this is just the beginning. We got a long way to go, and we have faith. The first time we marched, I looked to the sky and I just told myself, when I walk, I will walk by faith. And we will continue to walk by faith. We will continue to hold hands on this journey. White, black, Hispanic, Latino, we will continue to walk. We will march and march and march until the right thing is done. Thank you.
Tracy Martin and Sabrina Fulton, still grieving parents, even though they have wanted this decision, and now they have the decision, but nevertheless, it's not going to bring their son back. And you can feel that mother and father's heartbreak.
Absolutely.
You hear it in her voice. You can feel it, as you said, when she talks. Even the father, he's more stoic and reserved, but you can still feel the hurt and the pain, but they're happy that we're at this point.
And the father's saying that this is just the beginning.
And it is just the beginning. From a criminal defense standpoint, this is just, I mean, the arrest is where cases are born. There's been a lot of investigation, you know, Ken's had years of experience with that, but from the defense standpoint and even the prosecutor's standpoint as we go forward, we have just started. There's going to be, it's going to be a long process.
Now, the next development would be George Zimmerman appearing within 24 hours in front of a magistrate in Sanford, assuming with his defense attorney, Mark O'Mara, correct?
He will have a defense attorney with him tomorrow. If he doesn't hire one, there'll be one appointed to him. They're not going to let that go by. First appearance, which what he has to see within 24 hours, is a bond hearing. You may recall Angela was talking about that a little bit, about how that's scheduled. They have a bond schedule down there. Certainly he should be entitled to a bond. It may be very high. He actually may be in a no bond situation for other mitigating or aggravating reasons. But that is that's the first of many, many arguments that are going to be made on Mr. Zimmerman's behalf.
Now, we were hearing that he was somewhere that he couldn't be found. Well, that's what the public was saying. The police weren't saying that. The prosecutor wasn't saying that. So one would think if he goes in front of a magistrate for a bond hearing that he might be a flight risk, and that might be argued at the bond hearing. I don't think that's going to be the case. I think, as Randy said, he may have a bond, but it's going to be extremely high so that he will not take flight.
Wasn't it his former attorneys now who made that statement yesterday, that they weren't sure where he was?
He said he was out of state. Now, Angela Corey said that law enforcement has been aware of his presence. They've known where he is since the get-go.
And I've said that all along.
Which is normal. That's nothing unusual.
No, it's not. And when you hear these radical groups trying to put a bounty out on someone, well, if you put a bounty out on someone on your own and you find them and you catch them, what you going to do with them? The law enforcement knows where they are. If they wanted to make an arrest prior to that time, they could go out and reach out and touch him. So all these radical groups and organizations that wanted that sort of thing, that was just fluff. And wasted airtime.
We're going to go live now to Channel 4 Scott Johnson, who is in Sanford, where city leaders are expected to make a statement here shortly. Scott?
Yeah, Tom, we are expecting to hear from the city manager here, and we're at Sanford City Hall. This is the podium they will use here. City leaders in Sanford expected to talk. We're not really sure what they want to talk about. We have heard from Angela Corey and now the Trayvon Martin family, and city leaders here have been watching both news conferences live unfold. They wanted to be respectful to the prosecutor, in this case Ms. Corey, as well as Trayvon Martin's family. They say once those news conferences wrapped up, which now it appears they have, they will be coming out here to speak. So we are standing out live here at Sanford City Hall waiting for city leaders to come out and to address us about what we don't know at this point, about the status of their case, their thoughts on it. Of course, they had to turn it over to Angela Corey at the governor's request. The prosecutor down here in the Seminole County area stepping down, recusing himself because he did not want to make it appear that there was any sort of problem or give the public any sort of concerns that there would not be a full and thorough investigation. And now it was turned over to Angela Corey a little less than 3 weeks ago, her office in Jacksonville, to come in and take this over. That's where it came into our territory in Northeast Florida, and we have continued to look and follow this story ever since. And now we are waiting to hear what happens here. I heard Angela Corey say in her news conference is right as far as the venue right now, it is Seminole County where we're at right now. Then she was asked, will the trial be here in Seminole County? She would not give us an answer to that, not really knowing if the trial will transfer out of Seminole County up to somewhere else. But as of right now, her office is handling it. There are so many questions surrounding the city government, the police agents here in Sanford, in Seminole County, as far as prosecutors, how they handled it, originally saying that maybe George Zimmerman did not need to face charges. Of course, Angela Corey telling us a little less than an hour ago that she disagrees with that, saying that he does deserve second-degree murder charges, and that's where it stands now. Pardon me for continually looking over my shoulder, but I'm waiting for their city leaders to come out. I don't know what feed they're watching out of the Trayvon Martin family news conference, which was going on, but they said they would be speaking shortly after that, so we are continuing to wait here. The other question we have is because Ms. Corey saying that Mr. Zimmerman would be facing a magistrate here in Seminole County within 24 hours of his arrest. Where is he right now? I have not heard an answer on that. If he was in the Jacksonville area being transported back here or somewhere else, or if he's already in Seminole County, we don't have those answers. At least I don't. I don't know if there's more that you guys are gathering back there in the news hub there in Jacksonville, but we're still waiting to hear from Sanford city leaders. And Tom, Mary, we could be standing by. It could be any second now, could be a little bit, but they did say they were going to wait for the Martin family to wrap up here. And I'm live here in Sanford, and we are standing by. Back to you.
All right, thank you, Scott. And here's what we know right now. George Zimmerman has been charged with second-degree murder in the death of 17-year-old Trayvon Martin. Special Prosecutor Angela Corey made the announcement about 50 minutes ago. She says Zimmerman turned himself in to law enforcement. Now, for safety reasons, she would not reveal which jail he is being held in, but she says it is in Florida. Now, Corey refused to discuss details about why she made the decision to charge Zimmerman with second-degree murder out of concerns about jeopardizing the integrity of the case. Zimmerman will appear before a judge in Seminole County, which is in Central Florida, within 24 hours.
Here again is a highlight, an excerpt from Angela Corey's announcement.
Today we filed an information charging George Zimmerman with murder in the second degree. A capias has been issued for his arrest. With the filing of that information and the issuance of a capias, he will have a right to appear in front of a magistrate in Seminole County within 24 hours of his arrest, and thus formal prosecution will begin.
And let's go live now to Jason Law, who is downtown gauging some reaction. Jason, can you hear us?
I can, Mary, yeah, and things, again, remain calm. They were calm leading up to the announcement at 6 o'clock, and they're calm now as people have pretty much cleared out of the annex courthouse building behind me. Press conference has now been over for several minutes, and Congresswoman Kareem Brown actually made her way out and is talking to reporters right now. We had a chance to talk to her earlier, and she's obviously very happy about the news of the arrest and the charge that George Zimmerman is facing. She's been calling on this for weeks now, along with many other leaders in the state of Florida and also really around the country. Corrine Brown very happy about the news, but she says this is just the beginning. She doesn't know what the outcome it will be. That's, of course, the next step, but she says this is the first step in the road to justice for Trayvon Martin. We talked to other people just moments after Angela Corey announced that Zimmerman was facing a charge now, and this is what people had to tell us. You think he should have been charged?
I'm not one way or another, but we are going to have to trust Angela Corey to do her job and do it fairly and do it judiciously.
Well, knowing what we know, I mean, did you think he should have been arrested and charged, or do you think he was in self-defense doing what he did?
I think he should be charged, yeah.
Is this the start of the road for justice for Trayvon?
Maybe. I'm not sure. Depends on what the outcome is.
And that's a lot of what Corrine Brown that's a lot of what Congresswoman Corrine Brown told us just moments after walking out of the Annex building. This is a first step, but it's just the first step in what could be justice for Trayvon. Of course, there might be a trial. We just don't know at this point. But right now, we're going to go back to Scott Johnson, who's live in Sanford. Scott?
Its surrounding communities and across the nation. This is an event that's touched many hearts and many lives and started conversations that we hope that the atmosphere of civility will continue. We'd also like at this time to state that the case is in the hands of the justice system. Please allow it to work through the process and come to a natural conclusion. We have great respect, and our thoughts and prayers go out to the team in Jacksonville. We'll be seeking healing for the city of Sanford and ask for the community's cooperation as we move forward. I'd also like to thank the state's attorney, Angela Corey, for her comments regarding the cooperation and significant work done by and with the Sanford Police Department. Thank you.
We'll be taking questions now. If you'd raise your hand, City Manager or Mr. Mayor will take the questions.
Hi, I'm Valerie Boyd, Fox 35. Will the police chief be fired?
I have stated that I have questions about what took place. However, before rushing to judgment, I want facts and information from a law enforcement professional in terms of the actions of the Sanford Police Department. So specifically to your question, once I have that information, then I'll make a determination about Chief Lee as well as the entire Sanford Police Department.
What's the status of that investigation? Do you know where they are in the process?
It's ongoing to the best of my knowledge.
Sir, do you feel your police agency has failed the citizenry of Seminole County as well as the Martin family?
I think that's something that will be determined during the trial, and as I heard the special prosecutor, she did give some very positive comments regarding the work that was done by the Sanford Police Department. As we go forward, we'll see.
Mr. Bonaparte, you said earlier today that you did hear from U.S. Attorney General Eric Holder about an investigation as well here. What more have you heard from him? How far along in this investigation is it?
I'm sorry, I said I had read that he was involved and he was going to be doing an investigation at all. We have said from the beginning, the mayor and I, that we want a full investigation by outside agencies. We spoke to the United States Justice Department. So we encouraged a full investigation and was delighted to hear that the United States Attorney General also is going to be investigating.
Is there adequate security to handle housing Mr. Zimmerman and moving him to Seminole and possibly a trial to Seminole County?
As the mayor indicated, that's now open to the justice system.
Chief Lee is still being paid. How long is he going to continue to collect the salary while this investigation goes on?
Until I've been able to make a determination regarding his actions regarding this matter. When I get that report, when I get the information from an independent law enforcement source, then I will make that determination.
Sir, Mayor, City Manager, you've asked for continued calm here. Is there anything that you're bracing for at this time? Any indication that it'll be less than that?
As you've seen before, everybody that's come to our town have been absolutely peaceful. We expect the same at this time. You know, we're prepared for the what if, but you know, I don't think so. I don't think we've seen any indication that there'd be anything different at this point in time.
Could there be any backlash from the Zimmerman supporters now that it went to this level?
Well, I mean, you always prepare, and you know, we've got a lot of great people that are watching those issues. You know, I think it's in the hands of the Justice Department at this time, and I just ask for everybody to wait for them to make their decision. You know, State's Attorney Corey sounded very eloquent and you know, said a lot of words and you know, did a good job. And I think we can stand ready for her to work through the rest of the process.
Does the special prosecutor's decision here in any way reflect on an incompetence by the police department in this city?
No, I think you heard her say that she worked hand in hand, or her office worked hand in hand with in cooperation with the city of Sanford, the police department, and used a lot of the information that they had already taken in and expounded on it and used it. So I don't think it shows that right now.
On another issue, there are merchants we've spoken with in your downtown businesses and Points Beyond who say they have suffered because of the public outcry and the negative publicity the city has sustained. Is there anything in place to try to help heal that socioeconomic?
At 4 o'clock this afternoon, our economic development director met with a group of the business owners, and we continue down that path too. You know, I've talked to one of the state legislators that in our area, and we continue to have those discussions as to best be able to help them. There's no economic boycott of the city of Sanford. It's been stated by several of the gentlemen that came in, and you know, we're going to go down the road to make sure that we're viable right now and in the future for our business owners.
If you had your choice, would you have the case tried here?
That's not for me to decide.
Where is Zimmerman now?
Tried here?
Where is Zimmerman now, and do you know what state he's in? He's on
That's with Angela Corey and her investigative team.
Will he be brought here?
I don't have the answer to that.
I know that everything is with Angela Corey right now, but certainly at some point your officers talk to Zimmerman. Other than that surveillance video we saw.
We've been listening to the mayor and city manager of Sanford, Florida, reacting to the decision by Special Prosecutor Angela Corey to bring a charge of second-degree murder against George Zimmerman in the shooting death of Trayvon Martin. A few moments ago, we heard from Trayvon Martin's parents in Washington, D.C., who expressed relief that this arrest has now been made, but they also said this is just the beginning of the process, which of course it is. George Zimmerman is in custody somewhere here in the state of Florida and is expected within the next 24 hours to make an appearance before a magistrate in Sanford.
Ken Jefferson and Randy Reep join us once again for some final thoughts here. And Kent, if you can express to us, what are we gathering from all of this today? I mean, what a revelation here.
Yeah, like everybody said, I'll just echo it. This is just the beginning. The investigation is still ongoing. Angela Corey made that clear. It's still ongoing. Just because an arrest has been made doesn't mean that, okay, we've got all our ducks in a row, we're ready to go to trial. The investigation is still ongoing, so people are just going to have to realize that it is a process. They're going to have to suffer through the process, and then once it goes to court and the jury is assigned and everything, we'll know exactly how this case is going to play out.
Be patient. Randy?
It's kind of like a tennis match. You just saw the first serve of a very long match. We haven't even seen the return of that serve yet. So people are going to have to be patient. There are defense attorneys like our office that are out there going to be putting up a fight for Mr. Zimmerman, and there will be a long process to this.
Randy Reep and Ken Jefferson, thanks so much for being here with us.
My pleasure.
And of course, we'll continue to monitor this breaking news surrounding the charge that George Zimmerman now faces. For updates and background on the Trayvon Martin case, you can head to news4jax.com.
We'll have much more for you tonight at 10. Thank you for watching. We'll see you then.